Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
We've got Dan on the line. Dan, I'd like to ask you to just hold for just a second. I have a couple quick announcements. Dr. Shealy, I sent you an email. We had some sad news about one of our instructors. She's doing okay. But class, here is what happened. Guineith was on her horse, and she fell off. And as a result, she will be off the air for Wednesday for sure. She's in the hospital in Australia. 9 broken ribs, 2 fractured/cracked vertebrae, 2, her scapula was also fractured, punctured lung, and she had a dislocated left hip, but she put it back into place. The prognosis from what she said was that she will make a full recovery. I'd like to suggest that if you are inclined to pray, she's had a real rough go of it. Really, really rough. She's in the hospital, and it will be probably through the middle of the week. She'll be there. And if you'd like to send her an email, you can do that. I suggest you just send it to me, and I will forward it post haste to her. And that would be instructor@USAPrepares.com. 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 And just put Guineith in the subject line, and I will make sure that she gets them immediately. Also, if you are inclined to be one who prays, if you would include her in your prayers, I would appreciate that. Dr. Shealy, any comments about your thoughts about what she should do to speed recovery?
Well, she's doing the right thing at the moment, and I sent her a note because I once had a broken hip from being thrown off a horse, and I understand exactly, but all those ribs and all those other things, that's a lot worse than the injury I had many years ago.
Dr. Shealy, am I right that she should be taking a couple weeks off from, using her voice for 2 hours on Wednesdays?
Yes. It's better for her to concentrate on getting well right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a feeling now she lives on a farm, but she does things the hard way. I mean, if she's going to garden, it's going to be with a shovel and a rake and a hoe. Not a rototiller. And that would be rough on the chest too, trying to wrangle a rototiller. But she does not have a vehicle. She will either be on a bicycle or she's going to walk. And it's probably about 10 miles to the nearest outpost, or general type store.
Wow.
She's off the grid, but she has a couple sons, and they're helping her with the farm work, and they've taken over the farm right now. And so, do you have any thoughts about how she should manage this recovery?
Well, obviously, rest and lots of vitamin D3, lots of vitamin C, lots of K2. Here's a place where I would actually give probably 20, even 30 milligrams of K2 a day until she's healed.
Okay. And how much vitamin C would you recommend?
Well,
in this case,
2,000. My youth formula, 2,000 milligrams plus a gram of MSM would work.
Is that once a day, twice a day?
Once a day is fine.
Okay. All right. And a multivitamin with B complex, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I've written that down. Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to mention before Dan gets on? He's on hold right now.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Dan, welcome. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I just wanted to make that announcement. Welcome.
Yes, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for all the years that you've been on the air. I've only been listening to you for about 3 years now. And I guess with Dr. Shealy, you've been practicing for decades. How come you keep on practicing? When will you be done practicing and actually work?
Well, since 1956 is when I finished medical school, so a few years.
So with lawyers and doctors, how can they practice? Like I practice basketball.
Hey, great.
Dan, are you saying teachers teach, preachers preach, and lawyers and doctors practice? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out when they're going to stop practicing and actually work.
Well, we hopefully practice good things that help people.
There we go.
Dr. Shealy, why is it, to follow up on Dan's question, why is it that they call it practicing medicine?
Well, it goes back centuries, I suspect, because it got to be a legal thing many, many years ago. And so in order to legalize it, they have to call it something. So it's, quote, the practice of medicine. I mean, but as he said, the practice of basketball, the practice of teaching, it's just a euphemism.
Okay. Dan, at one time you were talking about solar power and you're interested in, so whenever you want to talk about that and what specifically, we can do that on the air, at any time that it appears appropriate to discuss that. I'd be glad to help you with that.
Okay, appreciate that.
And I'll share with you privately the way to get those pieces of gear at the lowest possible prices. And I'm really, I'm kind of leaving the central point of the call, but I'm allergic to overspending, overpaying. And so when we built our solar system, I was interested in doing it at the absolute lowest cost with the highest possible quality. And that's what I believe we've done. That's what we've accomplished. So I bought some of the components used, not the electronics, not the solar panels, not the charge controller, not the inverter, but the wiring. Instead of using a really expensive wire, I bought used, I'll call it new old stock wire that was commercial grade wire, and I put it in conduit. So I saved probably 50, 60, 70% on the wire, probably saved 75% on the solar rack. We did the installation ourselves, so we saved all the labor for building the piers, and we ended up with a MIG welder and some other equipment that I needed to for the construction. So we ended up with more and spent less, and it's better. So I'll be glad to share those thoughts on the air, and I'll share with you privately the sources for getting the electronic components.
Thank you. You said that so eloquently. I can say that to my wife, and she'll say, "No, you're just cheap."
Well, I do have an allergic reaction to stupidity. I mean, I really do. I just, if I'm going to buy something, it has to be a good value, or I just break out in hives. Even with the thought of it. I don't know why that is. I guess maybe many years ago I learned that I can work really, really hard and spend frivolously, or I can work less hard and spend carefully. And so since I'm allergic to work, as well as doing stupid things, I've decided that, many years ago that, I look at things in the long run instead of just the short run. So instead of just patching something up, I will do it, for the long run. And that came to me from my parents, my grandparents. It also came to me at my first, we'll call it, real job when, Sears, Roebuck and Company employed me to be a mechanic. And that was back around 1970 when I was in high school. And so on the weekends, and in the afternoons, I was a mechanic, and I had a bay, and I worked on cars, put them up in the air and worked on them. And the day number one, the shop foreman said to me, "Vinny, let me tell you, remember this for the rest of your life." And he said, "May the job be big or small, do it right or not at all." And I've shared that with all my classes, all the in-person classes I've taught. And I've shared it a couple of times on the air, and it's the right thing. Dr. Shealy, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, all the way, big blue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do it right. Do it right, because then you won't have to do it again. And I think there's some kind of a saying that says, there's, for many people, and I'm talking about the GDP, I'm not talking about our class, but I'm talking about the GDP, the generally dumb public. They seem to think that there's plenty of time to do it right the second time, right? Plenty of time to do it right the second time, just not the first time. So, Dan, back to you.
Yeah, Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts on the shingle shot?
Well, you would have to shoot me with a gun to get me to take one. I had a mild case of shingles when I was 18 years of age. Now, to me, that's got to be at least as good as getting a shingle shot. But in July of last year now, I developed the worst case of generalized shingles I've ever seen in my life. So if having shingles didn't make me lifelong immune, I'm not willing to take the vaccine.
The reason I bring that up is because about 4 months ago, my dad, at 78, passed away. And we were kind of scratching our head thinking, gosh, what happened? And we found out a week before he started going downhill, he had 2 shots of the shingles, I guess, a week apart. And we were thinking, gosh, his immune system was already low. What would a shingle shot do to him?
Right. All vaccines carry the risk of worsening. I'm not opposed to all vaccines, but for adults, most of the time, I'm not interested. I haven't had a flu shot or any such thing in 50 years.
Dan, let me put an exclamation point on what. Let me put an exclamation point on what Dr. Shealy and you just mentioned. I've said over the years, not very many times, but I had a very dear friend. His name was Paul. He was a U.S. Army veteran. And he developed cancer. But he was doing okay. Was progressing slowly. And I would go see him for lunch. I mean, he lived in the village. I'd go see him for lunch, and I'd call him up every day and, just chat with him, make sure he was okay. Saw to it that if there's something he needed, I would take care of it. And he told me he was going to the doctors, and I said, Paul, they're going to tell you to get a flu shot. Don't do it. And he said, okay. I said, promise me. He said, okay. And he came back from the doctor's appointment. I'll tell you what happened when we come back from the break. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us in Missouri. And his website, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. Telephone number 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. That's Dr. Shealy's number at his clinic. That's not the number to call in here at USA Prepares. If you want to call in at USA Prepares, our number is 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. 9933. Dan in Texas, I was telling you and Dr. Shealy in the class about my friend Paul. And he had cancer, and he was being treated for it, and things were okay. And he was getting around, he was mobile, and it was great, considering the circumstances. And I know they were okay because I used to visit him all the time. Well, he said he was going to the doctors, and I mentioned, don't get the flu shot. They're going to want you to get the flu shot. Don't do it. Promise me. Okay, I promise. I called him after he came back from the doctors, and I said, how'd it go? He said, well, you're going to be really mad at me. He said I need the flu shot. So I got the flu shot. Paul was dead in 30 days. And it was a horrible death. He was in excruciating pain. So, Dr. Shealy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like they took a guy with a compromised immune system, suffering from cancer, and then gave him a flu shot.
Common sense is the uncommon commodity. In my opinion, stupidity reigned.
Mm-hmm. Was it medically wrong to give someone a flu shot who is at home, not going out with cancer? Does it make any sense at all to give that person a flu shot?
Well, a lot of things in medicine don't make sense, and that's one of them.
Okay. So, Dan, I wanted to share that with you because it ties with what you were saying, ties directly. And I know that I've been, in the good old days, I'm talking about before December of 2 years ago. I'd be in Sam's Club with Mrs. Finelli, and there was a gal with, would just show up for the day, and she would have a table, and she'd be hawking flu shots. I'm sorry, shingle shots. Well, and flu shots at different times. So you could, get them for free or get them for $2 or whatever. I mean, the enticement was. And I would always say to Mrs. Finelli, geez, too bad we don't have the time to get one, huh? So too bad we're in a hurry. But those are my thoughts. Back to you, Dan, and then, Diane in Tennessee, you're up next.
Yeah, last question. You had mentioned the last few times I listened on Monday, and Vince, you weren't here, but you, Dr. Shealy, you kind of talked about going through your body and making everything relaxed. I came across a book 30-plus years ago by Bud Winters called Relax and Win. Have you heard of him?
I've heard of it, but don't know the book. Right.
Oh, okay. It's kind of a background. He was coach for the track team at San Jose State, and he had his athletes go through a process where whether they're sitting down and getting all their body parts relaxed from their toes all the way to the top of their head, and just making sure that they're relaxed. And if you're sitting at a desk, you can almost fall asleep. It was self-hypnosis.
Well, relaxation, however you do it, as long as you do it mentally, is the single greatest health enhancer in the world.
Dr. Shealy, when you performed a past life regression on me, I was put into a trance. Was that one stage deeper than relaxation? Because I was okay. I was aware of what was happening, barely aware, and it was almost like I couldn't move very easily. I mean, if I had to jump up, it would have been tough.
Yeah, that's probably what would be called stage 3 hypnosis. Mm-hmm. Stage 4, you would be totally out. Mm-hmm. No memory, no movement.
Mm-hmm. Dan, back to you.
Okay, so just ending my comments to the next caller. So I use this back for...
Go ahead, Dan. You got a few seconds.
Okay, so thank you for taking my call. I just use this for golf, and it helped me get over my fears in golf and to really focus on golf and not be feared.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Dan, thank you so much for calling. Diana, you're up next. As soon as we come back from the commercial break. Now, I want to thank the bottom of the hour news people for giving us that sports update. What I learned is they're going to have to go out there, they're going to have to play their best, they're going to have to show up, and there are no guarantees. I'm glad that we learned that. Class, make sure you write that down, memorize it, because that is important. Diana in Tennessee, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norm Shealy.
Good morning to both of you. My name is actually Deanna from Tennessee. I have a question for Dr. Shealy on eczema. My husband.
Deanna, are you on a speakerphone?
I am.
Yeah, that must be the problem because I can't hear her well at all.
Is that better?
Could you switch? It'll be better if you don't use the speakerphone.
Okay, I turned the speakerphone off.
Great. Okay, thank you. Please continue.
Okay. My husband suffers from eczema. We've been organic for about 12 years. We've been organic keto for the last 4 years. My husband suffered from a back injury about 2 years ago. He's been doing chiropractic and deep tissue therapy. That's been really helpful. About a year ago, he had a terrible flare-up, a herniated disc in C4 and C5. And I've read a lot of connections to that, from nervous damage down in the arm connecting to the hand, which is where his eczema flares up very, very badly. I switched up our diet a little bit, like a low-carb, organic, sugar-free paleo. I thought maybe he was missing some nutrients. I've also been giving him a very strong probiotic. Hello?
Yeah?
A very strong probiotic. I've been giving him Probulin P-Pack every night. That seems to help, but now it's not really helping so much. So I'm wondering where I need to go right now. It flares up just really on his hands. He has a couple little spots on his arms, but he works with his hands, and it's been very detrimental to him. It's very painful. It'll clear up for a few days, and then it'll come back. So I want to know if I'm approaching this wrong, but maybe maybe he's missing something, and how I can approach this naturally.
Well, that's a biggie, and basically I need a lot more information, but
okay.
At the top of my list would be, how much does he weigh?
He weighs about 165.
Okay, 50,000 units of vitamin D3 once a week.
Vitamin, okay.
Dr. Shealy's Youth Formula.
Okay.
4 every day. Dr. Shealy's Essentials, 2 every day. Astaxanthin, Astaxanthin, 20 milligrams every day.
Okay.
I would also try castor oil packs over the abdomen. You soak a cloth in castor oil over the entire abdomen, put a plastic over it and a heating pad for an hour every night for several nights.
Okay.
Very safe, very effective, and all of this should help a lot within 5 to 7 days. If it doesn't, well, I'd need a lot more information.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Did you say your name is Deanna?
It is Deanna.
Okay. Okay. You know, I have a call screen, and I can only go by the call screen. It's spelled.
That's okay.
It's spelled Diana.
I get it all the time.
Okay. Well, Deanna, let me make a suggestion.
Sure.
I have had some health challenges over the years.
Okay.
And I have gone to I have an internist, I have a pulmonologist, etc. And I decided that the approach that they had and the experimentation they were doing on me, I didn't like it. Okay. So I called Dr. Shealy and I made an appointment with his office. And I had a 1.5 hour consultation, and they're available in half-hour and hour consultations.
Okay.
And what happened was I was emailed a questionnaire. And this questionnaire, you can think of it like a health survey. Okay. And it will take a minimum, if you concentrate, 15 minutes to fill this out. There are lots of questions. And they deal with things like injuries, stress, maladies, things that have already happened to the individual. And so I filled that out, faxed it back in. We have a fax machine here at the farm, faxed it in, and I had my consultation with Dr. Shealy. And it was, I would say, pretty rapid fire because he asked me a few questions. I explained the situation. He had access to my survey. And the survey dealt a lot with stresses. And over the years, you've probably heard Dr. Shealy talk about how stress can really influence your health. And
Yeah.
if you have lots of stresses, obviously negatively.
Yeah.
So he's recommended, and correct me if I say anything wrong, Dr. Shealy, please, but my understanding is that you've got to eliminate as many of these negative stresses as possible if you want to be healthy.
Right.
So there is a ranking system that he employs with this survey, and it will let you know and him know numerically when you add up the stress, different levels of stress for different kinds of activities, like, divorce and death of a spouse and, things like that, injuries, hospitalizations, loss of teeth. You add all that up and you get a number, and he wants that number to be below a threshold. Then he prescribed for me many of the things that he just told you.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, if you would like, and if you'd like and this applies to everyone, class, all of you, if you'd like, you can talk to Dr. Shealy one-on-one. You can do it via Skype. I did it via just a plain old telephone.
Okay.
And, or you can do it, electronically with video. But you will get a detailed plan.
Okay.
And what he did for me was I got, more youth formula. I'm sorry, 2 youth formula, but more vitamin C. And when he talks about his youth formula, I have it right here in my hand, right in the studio. It's called Dr. Shealy's Youth Formula. Now, this is ascorbic acid, 2,000 milligrams or 2 grams, and it has 1 gram or 1,000 milligrams of MSM, plus it has beta-glucan in it.
Okay.
Now, this is not your typical vitamin C, ascorbic acid, or ascorbic acid with pepperine. This is his formulation, and it works in conjunction with what else he recommended. And by the way, this is not a commercial. This is, I'm doing this, and I have been for quite some time. I just stepped up the dosages at his recommendation. Here's another one called Dr. Shealy's Essentials, Eco Green Iron-Free Essentials. Now, this is his multivitamin, which has those 2 things are probably the building blocks of what I believe he just recommended for you, plus the addition of the vitamin D3 and the astaxanthin, etc. So I suggest you seriously consider following his recommendation, because I can tell you unequivocally that it absolutely, positively worked for me.
Okay.
And I wasn't in all that great shape. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, how much longer am I going to be doing radio? And, I could measure it in seconds, not minutes. And, so I am doing great. I really am. And it's because Dr. Shealy spent the time with me, looked at my survey, determined, and Dr. Shealy has known me for years, 10 years at least. And, plus the 2 hours a week we do together, and, we've done events together, and we've been to each other's farms, that kind of thing. So if you want to get close to that and get that recommendation, I have a very strong feeling that he's going to hit the nail right on the head the first time. He's got more experience probably than 90+% of the doctors out there. I mean, how many doctors can say that they've been practicing medicine since 1956? How many? Not too many. Maybe
Real
one.
medicine.
Real medicine. And I think you ought to ask him one other question. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you might want to ask him what his feeling is about organic, since you mentioned that.
Yeah, I do. Like, I just tried to, I know that it's organic isn't really what it is, but my process of going that way was to try to eliminate as much toxins as I possibly can, and take the accountability onto ourselves. I mean, our world is completely toxins. We take in toxins everywhere we go, and I know that I'm taking in, toxins from the organic as well. The reason why I did that was to try to take control of the situation as much as I could, to try to limit all the intake.
Dr. Shealy,
well, I'm not opposed to the word organic, and I don't think it's worth usually the difference in cost because the number one poison in the world is Roundup.
Yes.
And 75% of all the rain that falls in the United States of America has Roundup in it.
Yes.
So to me, to call it organic is actually wrong. It is absolutely immoral to call it wrong if you know that.
Okay.
To call it organic. So I won't pay extra for it. But, hey, it can't be any worse than the ordinary stuff, at least.
Right. And I know that, but I was just trying to cleanse the body as much as I can and being aware of what I'm putting in it.
Right.
So that's my vision. But now that we moved from Pennsylvania to Tennessee, we bought a 5-acre homestead, and we're trying to get back to our roots. Like I grew up very different than my husband did. I grew up with my grandfather right next to me. My grandfather gardened with me every day. My father was a butcher on a farm that produced raw milk and grass-fed beef back in the 70s. And so I've been eating this way as a child. I've never been hospitalized. I've never been sick. I've never had one broken bone. So I'm trying to, I guess, kind of get back to my childhood roots, and I figured that the best way I could do that while living in Pennsylvania and living rurally was seeking out organic, even though I know it's not 100% organic or clean. So that was my path. But I've been more concerned in the keto diet. I keep thinking that maybe it was dietary, like maybe I was missing something. Maybe because we've been on it for so long. But I've done it right. It hasn't been a lot of processed meat and whatnot. It's a lot of greens, a lot of vegetables, a lot of avocados, a lot of salmon, like a lot of good, like I've done it right. I've done my research. I've taken, I've done all that I can to try to make us as healthy as possible. He's very healthy other than the back injury and this darn eczema, and I've been trying to pinpoint it, and we just broke down, and my husband said, please, I don't have the time. Please call Dr. Shealy. He listens to you all the time, so here I am.
Can you stay with us through
the break? Thank you.
I have a couple comments and questions, and one of them has to do with your water supply. When we come back from the break, would you tell us whether you're on a well or whether you're on city gin? We'll be right back. Plus, Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Deanna's with us in Tennessee. Deanna, I believe you mentioned that you are now living on a 5-acre property. Does that have well water or city water?
It actually has city water, and the county in which we live in, unfortunately, is fluoridated. But we have a big Berkey system in the kitchen that we use, that we've had this for about 10 years, and we love it. So anything that we cook with, we use the Berkey, we drink the Berkey, even all the dogs and the cats get the Berkey.
Okay, that's excellent. Let me ask you this. The Berkey system, does that have a fluoride filter attached to the carbon block filter?
Oh,
or
yes.
Is it just carbon?
Oh, no, it's the dual filters.
Okay.
Or the quadra filters, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that because just the black element does not have the composition to remove fluoride from the water.
No,
it does. It can remove chlorine, but not fluoride. Okay, good.
And I'm wondering if maybe that's what's causing his flare-ups to be a bit worse than they were here than they were in Pennsylvania, because in Pennsylvania we had, of course, we had city water, but we used the Berkey there as well, but we were not fluoridated there, and here we are.
Dr. Shealy, would you please share with our class and Deanna your thoughts on fluoridation and the toxicity, please?
Second in general poison to glyphosate or Roundup, and actually in the long run, one of the worst poisons in the history of the world, because sperm count has decreased from 150 million to 40 million average just because of fluoridated water. It is,
Dr. Shealy,
I consider the dental industry at least as evil as the tobacco industry for fluoridating anything and for their silver mercury fillings. Both of them evil harm.
Right.
Could fluoridation exacerbate the condition of eczema, Dr. Shealy? Could it cause?
Okay.
It damages everything.
Okay.
Deanna, so what that means is, let's say you were to switch to bottled water. That doesn't mean bottled water does not, and this is for the purpose of the class as well. That doesn't mean that bottled water does not have fluoride in it, because if you read the labels of bottled water, you might find that it says purified municipal water. So they might take the municipal water that comes out of the stream or the lake or the river, treat it with chlorine and fluoride, then process it somehow, filter out the big chunks, maybe use a carbon block filter, and then put it in jugs and sell it at the store.
Right.
So you are absolutely on the right track. We have a ProPure water filtration system. One filter does it all, and it has a kind of like a white ceramic silver-infused shell, and the silver kills some of the biologicals, and then there's carbon granules that absorb the other toxins and the fluoride. So it does it all. I'm not suggesting that you switch. I'm just saying that it does it as well. We happen to use the ProPure system in our house for everybody, the cats, dogs, us, cooking,
right,
etc. I think you're absolutely on the right track.
Okay.
Based on what you're trying to do, and I applaud you for doing that. There's one other thing that I have done that I haven't mentioned, and I talked to Dr. Shealy about this in my personal consultation, and that is that I have a pulsed electromagnetic frequency device that was developed by Dr. Shealy and one of our other instructors, Lou Cassidy. And Dr. Shealy built the parameters of which the pulsing and the frequencies are designed, and Lou Cassidy actually constructed and programmed it. So I have one, and I use this on my body, and I've mentioned this a couple times on the air. I believe, now I'm only a sample size of one, so I can't say with 100% certainty, but I believe from my experience that it reduced the inflammation in my chest, along with the rest of the protocols that Dr. Shealy recommended for me, and most of them he recommended for your husband.
Okay.
So, Dr. Shealy, the question is, do you think that the PEMF device might help her husband? Is that something that's a possibility, or?
Well, obviously, that's one of the greatest restorers of generalized health in every organ in the body.
Okay.
But I'd want to have a consultation before recommending it.
Okay.
So, Deanna, what you have displayed over the air is that you are someone who's going to follow through. Okay, and that is
absolutely.
If you're going to do this consultation, I have a feeling that you are an individual that isn't going to take the recommendations from Dr. Shealy lightly. You're just going to deploy them, implement them, and follow through. So I want to say thank you for that. And let me give you that number, class. This is not a commercial. This is not, I have no financial relationship. I buy the supplements just as you would from Dr. Shealy. That telephone number for a consultation, if you want one, is 417-351. 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. Deanna, do you have anything else that you'd like to ask Dr. Shealy? You can.
No, thank you so very much, the both of you, for your time today. I'm going to start with this, and then we'll get that consultation rolling.
Thank you so much. We'll be right back after top of the hour. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Dr. Norm Shealy. Just wanted to mention that tomorrow Rich Sheben and I will be broadcasting together. Let's see, Wednesday, Kurt Wilson will be joining me for 2 hours. Kurt Wilson, the armchair survivalist. Then Thursday, Kathy will be interviewing me for either 1 or 2 hours starting at 9 o'clock. She may be able to stay for 2 hours. And that'd be wonderful if she can, but if she can't, I'll continue with tips from the book. But she wants to ask me about appliance repairs. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that you can, if you have an agitator washing machine, you can buy all of the spare parts that I think you might need for about $30 to keep that thing running. And then Friday, Bert's going to be with us for hour number 2. And I think he's going to be interviewing me about home wiring and continuing that discussion. Dr. Shealy, I have a request from one of our class to ask you about TMJ, which is, I'm just describing the jaw problem where it's really tough to chew. Your jaw seems to not want to work properly. Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, this is from spasms, of course, in the jaw muscles. And there is an EMG biofeedback technique. It's a little complex, but actually, autogenic training alone, if you really will do it, 18 minutes twice a day, can markedly reduce TMG.
Okay. Well, I have a feeling that this student will absolutely do that, and I will point the student directly toward your website, and that is normshealy.com. And Dr. Shealy, how would you recommend they find the section about autogenic training on your website?
Well, it should come up pretty automatically. If he signs up for my newsletter, he can download Autogenic Focus at no charge. That is autogenic training. I want everybody to have Focus.
That. Okay. So, class, you can go to normshealy.com, sign up for the free newsletter, and you get it multiple times a week. And you'll be able to download for free Autogenic Focus, which is the autogenic training. So there you have it. Okay. Dr. Shealy, iodine.
Well, it is essential, not just for... It is essential not just for the thyroid, but for energy. Actually, you need a little bit of iodine in every cell in your body. 150 micrograms, 1.5 milligrams a day, is the average adult dose that's necessary. Now, you can get that in a liquid. It's liquid iodine, or you can get it once a week, taking one tablet only of iodoral, IODORAL.
Okay, that's 1.5 milligrams of iodine per day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Shealy, is all iodine the same? And the reason I'm asking, you can go to the farm supply store or order it online, and we have iodine spray for our cows. Like if they get their leg banged up or cut, we have a sprayer that can reach several feet, so we don't get kicked when they realize how much it burns. But we can we can spray them, and we can buy it in 8 ounces. We can buy it in quarts, 16 ounces. And you can buy iodine, obviously, in these little dropper bottles that might be an ounce or two. Is all iodine the same, or are there different qualities? Or is it
right? Now, the liquid iodine, the brown liquid that you get, that used as a local anesthetic, or a local disinfectant, whatever, is not what you drink. You don't, under any circumstance, drink that or take it in orally. You can paint it on the skin, and there's a test. You paint about an inch square or round bit on your abdomen so where you can see it. And if it goes away in less than 24 hours, you are deficient in iodine. That's a test for iodine deficiency. But to take it orally, you need one that you get really from a health food store or a pharmacy.
Okay. So I guess what we're saying is for sure you're saying that there's a difference between the external and internal use of iodine and the way it's manufactured. But are there different concentrations of iodine as well?
Oh yes, of course. Again, even in the as I said, in the liquid, the one I used many years ago in my research was called liquid iodine by a company out of Dallas, but it was 150 micrograms required 20 drops, but different strokes for different folks. Other companies might make a different concentration. And the iodoral contains 12 milligrams. And I take that once a week. It's just my preference. It's a lot easier than doing the liquid.
Mm-hmm. Can a person overdose on iodine?
Absolutely. Way back, as early as the 1940s, we were recommended to keep in our house a certain kind of iodine to take in case of a nuclear explosion, because nuclear explosions could make radioactive iodine, which can actually destroy your thyroid gland. In that case, you would take a big dose of iodine to keep from taking up the radioactive iodine.
Okay, so what would you suggest that a person not consume more than? Is there such a number?
Yeah, not more than 12 milligrams a week.
Okay. And what would the symptoms be if someone did, let's say, take 20 by accident?
Well, you might not notice anything for a week to a month, but then you could notice increasing fatigue because the thyroid had been destroyed. Or blocked, really.
Okay. All right. So we don't know what's going to happen. There are countries that are on hair triggers right now and have been during the Cold War as well. Do you recommend that we have on hand, should there be a nuclear blast or attack, iodine at the ready?
Absolutely. I mean, basically, you could just take 2 or 3 iodoral in a row one day. That would be the easy way to get it.
Okay. So would that be roughly 36 milligrams in one day? And just take it for one day?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got, in case of attack, nuclear attack, 36 milligrams once for one day. Okay. All right. Potassium. What is the significance of having the right balance of potassium in our diets?
Well, it is one of the absolute essential minerals, and it has to do with all kinds of cell function, but particularly important for the heart and the rhythm of the heart, for instance, and muscle contraction. You get it, of course, mostly out of green leafy vegetables, but many people are deficient in that. And I like, as a supplement, potassium gluconate, Gluconate. And just, even though I'm getting more than enough vegetables, I take a rounded teaspoon of gluconate, potassium gluconate every morning.
One rounded teaspoon. One rounded TSP. Okay. And I was looking at the internet over the weekend, and I just typed in potassium supplements, and I was reading the labels on the images on my screen. And one of them, was a potassium supplement, and it said that it had 2% of the recommended daily allowance. That would mean that you'd have to take 50 capsules.
That's a waste of money, time, and energy.
Right. And that's why I asked the question about, how do we get it? Now, are you saying that, like, spinach would be a good way to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
even
kale?
Lettuce has some. Asparagus.
Okay. All right.
Broccoli.
Okay. And what about the balance with other supplements? Should we be paying attention to the quantity of potassium compared with other supplements?
Well, I mean, they do go together, but in general, if you get your minimum of 5 and preferably 8 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day, those basics will be taken care of.
I just have this feeling, Dr. Shealy, that, with the new lifestyle that we are all enjoying, not going out as much, not going to the stores as much, all of these precautions that people are taking in the supply chain disruptions, that people just flat out aren't getting those 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. I just believe that is the case. And I can't prove it, but I have a feeling that people are eating more what I would call extruded food, what you refer to as in the center of the supermarket, not along the outside, but along, boxes and jars and bags and tubes and, of food, or alleged food. I just don't think that we're having those 5 servings of fruits and nuts and vegetables per day that you'd like us to have. Do you think that's true?
Absolutely.
Okay. Are you hearing that in your discussions with those who are asking for your medical help.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So in terms of intake of nutrition, would you say that it's not as good as it was a year or two ago?
Well, I can't tell you about now versus 1 or 2 years, but it's been bad for the last 20 or 30 years.
Okay. All right. So if we have a choice of, if we have good soil, as you do and we do here, and of course the Garden State, if you could find some virgin soil, that would be really, really good. If you could find good soil, how would you contrast the nutritional difference between growing your own garden, which you should be thinking about starting now, class, for the summer, the growing season? How would you contrast the quality of nutrition growing your own? We'll talk about your gardening, tomatoes and peppers and lettuces and those kinds of things, carrots and radishes, compared to buying them. Is there a difference, a noticeable difference in terms of nutrition?
I would say anywhere from 50 to 100% better.
Okay. All right, so class, so you just heard Dr. Shealy say, start your garden. Start your garden, grow your garden. That's what I heard.
I've ordered all of my seeds already.
Okay. And do you have a recommendation for the seeds that you would suggest people buy right now? I'm going to write this down if you have one for us.
Well, I like, I'll wait till after the break.
So we're going to go into a break. Class, this will give you plenty of time to get that paper, pen, and pencil to write down the seeds that you should be getting now before the mad dash, because people are staying home and they might start thinking about this in a month or two. You can get the jump on them and make sure you get yours. We're going to be talking about what seeds to order right now. We'll be back with Dr. Norm Shealy, medical doctor. Class, Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, we were talking about what seeds to order for our garden this growing season that's coming as soon as the weather breaks. What would you recommend that we buy?
Well, lettuce, broccoli, Chinese cabbage, spinach, asparagus, kale, and there are many different varieties of each of those, Brussels sprouts, and okra is one of my favorites as well, bell peppers, eggplant, and green beans. And of course, there are lima beans, and then, of course, peas of various kinds, from the finely kind to the very low plant types. And then cucumbers. And I always plant at least one type of cantaloupe. I don't plant, and vegetable spaghetti. There are many, many others, but that's the top of my list.
Okay, how about tomatoes?
Well, I do plant tomatoes. I most of the time I grow my own from seeds, but sometimes I just buy them at a seed store, where they have the early plants already ready. I like Jet Star, for instance. Okay.
When you plant your seeds, the ones that you start, do you start some inside in some kind of a container?
Yes. I have a little planter of, I think, 72 or so different ones in I can plant rows of different things, and it has a plastic cover over it, and I grow it in my little greenhouse.
Okay. And how ahead of, how many weeks or so do you start these plants before expecting to take them outside after the last frost?
Early to mid-February.
Early to mid-February. Okay. There you go, class. So we are in Missouri, and what I heard Dr. Shealy say, I was writing as fast as I could, so I might have missed a few, but lettuce, broccoli, Chinese cabbage, asparagus, kale, Brussels sprouts, okra, bell peppers, eggplant, green beans, lima beans, peas, cucumbers, cantaloupe, tomatoes, and what I didn't hear was watermelon. Do you plant watermelon, Dr. Shealy?
I do not. It isn't that I don't like watermelon, but for a person living alone, it's a lot of work for what I can do with it. I can eat a cantaloupe, but I can't eat a whole watermelon.
Well, let me ask you. And I noticed you did not say corn. We've had just terrible success with corn, or great failure with corn. Do you plant corn?
I used to when I used to like corn on the cob, but I honestly, again, I don't grow corn anymore.
Okay, all right. I had a question about watermelon. So, watermelon is a diuretic, right? I mean, it will keep you, if you eat enough of it fast enough, it'll keep you really close to the bathroom. You'll be peeing like crazy. Now, that being the case, if someone overdoes it with watermelon, can they flush their system of minerals? Is that something we should be cautious of?
It's certainly possible, but I mean, I think you get diarrhea actually by the time you got to the stage where it was that bad.
Okay. And Dr. Shealy, some people have noticed there's a relationship between, let's say they get really sick, and I'm just talking about some common malady where they have like a massive kind of a cold, and at the very end of that, let's say 3 or 4 or 5 days later, they have a bout of diarrhea. Is that bout of diarrhea a signal that that's the big flush of getting these toxins out, or is it something different?
Well, it could be both. It could be, toxicity from the things that are being eliminated, or irritation of the intestine itself. But as long as it was just, one day or a couple of movements, I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay. When we come back, Dr. Shealy, there's a guy that I know you're a big fan of his, and he has become the largest owner of farmland in the United States.
One of the most evil persons on the face of the earth.
Well, he sure looks like it, doesn't he? Dr. Norm Shealy's with us, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. His telephone number at his clinic in Springfield, Missouri, Central Time Zone, is 417-351-5221. And I know you all took copious notes of the sports update at the bottom of the hour. And for those of you who weren't able to write it down fast enough, what they said was they have a great team, they have fun at practice, and we're going to have to play our very best. So make sure you've got that down and for posterity. And that was today's bottom of the hour sports update. Dr. Shealy, I can't believe we're wasting radio time on such frivolity. Dr. Shealy, I'm looking at Best Buy right now, and for only $99.99, you and I and the class can get a subscription to Microsoft's 365. It's kind of like an Office. And so when in the good old days when you thought that you could buy a program or series of programs or an application like Microsoft Office and you could load it on your computer and it would work until, you either lost your hard drive or decided to just give up on it. It's new now. So now you don't really own it. You just kind of rent it. And for $100, you can rent it for 12 months. At which time, if you stop paying the rent on it, they have an auto renew program. So it'll just keep you, plugged in by just, renewing your subscription and charging your account, if you will, maybe your credit card account, keep charging you for it. So it'll keep that thing operating. That guy who wants you to be tethered to Microsoft forever by renting you something that you used to be able to buy, he is the guy who said that the future is no private property. No private property is in our future, according to the wealthy Bill Gates. And at the same time he's saying that, he has bought about 269,000 acres in the United States. So
most
fortunately
evil
for us
man in the face of the earth, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Bill Gates.
No disagreement.
Should
No
be
disagreement.
hanged in
He's the
public
guy.
square.
Yeah, he's the guy that says, yeah, there are too many people on the planet and we need to have vaccinations. And of course, those are mutually exclusive statements, right? So vaccinations, you would believe would lengthen someone's life, assuming that they actually did what we, the villagers, might believe a vaccine would do. But many people believe that they are deadly. And we talked about that earlier in hour number 1 of this broadcast. So if you live in any of the following states, you are in the company of Bill Gates property. Now that would be Washington State for 16,000 acres, Idaho for 9,000, California for 4,500 acres, Arizona, he seems to like that a lot, 26,000 acres. Now I'm rounding. Wyoming, he doesn't like so much, roughly 975 acres. Colorado, 2,300 acres. New Mexico, he really doesn't like that all that much at all because he only has 1 acre there. Nebraska, 21,000 acres. Wisconsin, 1,200 acres. Iowa, 552 acres. Illinois, 18,000 acres. Arkansas, 48,000 acres. Louisiana, 69,000 acres. Mississippi, 17,000 acres. Florida, 15,000. North Carolina, 874. Indiana, 9,136. Ohio, 9,000 acres. Kathy, so you are a neighbor of Bill Gates. And Michigan, 2,200 acres. And I think I mentioned Wisconsin, but if I didn't, 1,188 acres. Now, he does not have property in Missouri. And that's a good thing. Yeah. So here's a guy who's saying, private property, the future is no private property, and he's buying up farmland like it's going out of style, and he has the most farmland of any individual owner in the United States of America. So the word to the wise is you can listen to what Bill Gates says, but you probably ought to think the opposite. Okay? So we have been saying, Dr. Shealy, Guineith, Rich, I, and a whole bunch of other instructors here at USA Prepares have been saying, you ought to buy a farm. If you can pull it off, you ought to buy a farm. And, my lineage, well, when my grandparents came from Italy, they were, I guess, farmers and then skipped a generation with my parents and then back to me and, Mrs. Finelli where we fired up a farm. But, were we trained in being farmers? Absolutely not. Did we learn it ourselves? Yes. And I have a feeling that Dr. Shealy learned how to be a farmer as well. Is that right?
Oh, of course. Now, I grew up living on a farm for a good deal of my childhood, but certainly in adulthood, I chose it and have continued.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Shealy, let me ask you this. If you had the opportunity to do it all over again, knowing everything that you have learned in your entire life, would you recommend for yourself a different lifestyle? Would you be an apartment dweller? Would you buy a condo? Would you move to the suburbs? Would you still be a farmer? What would you do, Dr. Shealy?
I would be a farmer. I would like to live. I would not like to live even in the little city of Pleasant Hope, which is only 614 people. I like my farmland and I like my privacy.
I have to agree with you. And one thing that being a farmer does, generally speaking, farmers are not known as being the wealthiest. I mean, there are, people in Wall Street who live in little apartments who have much more in terms of U.S. denominated digits than most farmers have. But what farmers have is distance from their neighbors. Just by the fact of having a farm. If you have a farm, you have land, and the land puts you at a distance with your neighbors. And that's kind of a good thing. Now, it's not like we don't like our neighbors. We have some great neighbors. But, they don't bother us and we don't bother them. If they're in trouble, we help them. If we're in trouble, they help us. But they're not hanging around, looking for stuff from us. It's a great relationship. And I suggest that you consider what Dr. Shealy just mentioned, and that's the way we live. And we chose this lifestyle. That's not the easiest. I mean, our driveway is long enough to have potholes that can swallow a small child. And if we don't like that, we have to go fill them up. And if we want to fill them up with a shovel, that's the hard way. If we want to fill them up with a backhoe, that's a lot easier, but then you've got to have a backhoe. Then you have to maintain it. So there's a whole bunch that goes with being a farmer. But it's a lifestyle that I would not want to trade for the lifestyle of being, in suburbia, Urbanville, or an apartment. I really like the idea of having a farm. And you know what? There are people who our farm is probably valued at the same price as some houses, just houses, with an acre or two. And to me, that's absolutely crazy. Now, they have manicured lawns and no weeds, and we have lots of weeds and not manicured. But we can't manicure it because it's too big. Right, Dr. Shealy? It's difficult to have a manicure.
Yours is centrifuged, if you will, or mowed by the cows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the proof of it is there are little brown piles everywhere of used grass. Dr. Shealy, glucosamine and chondroitin. I've been taking that for years. What are your thoughts about glucosamine and chondroitin as a supplement for joints?
It's useful. No question about it. It can be very useful indeed. My favorite is now products make one called joint support powder. Mm-hmm. And for people with joint trouble, I do recommend it.
Okay. Is there a difference between, and the one that I have been taking is, it's manufactured by a company called Schiff, SCHIFF, and 1,500 milligrams of glucosamine plus MSM 1,500 milligrams of glucosamine plus 1,500 milligrams of MSM. Now, I've tried the generics, and they don't seem to work so well. And what I found is for joint pain, I can take it in the morning, and I won't have joint pain in, the rest of the day. I've tried the others, the house brands, and they don't work. At least for me. Is the joint powder that you're talking about, does it have more content, different content?
I would have to look at it. It's been years since I've actually looked it up. My mother, who lived to be 97, took it for at least the last 15 years of her life, and it helped her immensely.
Okay. Did she have joint pain? Is that what it was? Okay. That's what I have. It for me, it fixes it. It's like I don't have it if I, remember to take glucosamine and chondroitin. Is there a catalytic type effect of taking glucosamine and chondroitin with, let's say, animal gelatin?
Well, I like gelatin. To me, it's one of my favorite sources of protein. It's not quite as complete a protein as meat, but it does have stuff that your joints and connective tissue like. I use a tablespoon or two of beef gelatin every day.
Now, I'm just putting pieces together, connecting some dots. We talked about how you boil up some chicken for your dogs. Now, that means to me that they are getting gelatin in their diet from the boiling of pieces of chicken that you buy, 10 pounds at a time. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that it's necessary for your dogs as well?
Well, I think it's good for them, yes.
Okay. Our dogs have trained us that they like scrambled eggs. So when the puppies are in the kitchen, and they're almost a year old now, if I'm making breakfast, the shepherds and by the way, I didn't realize it. I thought we had a Terrier 57. The veterinarian said, yeah, you've got a Terrier 57, meaning a mutt. And what we found out was we don't have a mutt. So this puppy kind of was frozen and it was very, very tiny. And it's not a Terrier 57, although it looks like a terrier. about 35 pounds. She is what's called a mountain cur, C-U-R. And it explains a lot of her defects. Number one, she's very loyal, which is wonderful. She barks a lot, which is great. But she is paying attention 100% of the time. She idles at 120 miles an hour. She's a hunter. They say she's trainable, but I'm not quite so sure about that part. But have you ever experienced a mountain cur, Dr. Shealy?
I have not.
Oh, these things have four-wheel drive, and it's engaged all the time. I mean, they can outrun our shepherds. And we can let this gal out with one of our shepherds. She'll outrun the shepherd. Then we let the other shepherd out, and she'll outrun that one next. So it's amazing. But anyway, they've trained me in scrambled eggs, making scrambled eggs every day. We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, medical doctor. And Dr. Shealy, is there anything that you wanted to share with the class before we end today's
program? Keep going.
Okay. Have you heard or read some of these derogatory names that have been used to describe the president and vice president select? Have you heard some of these?
Of course.
Yeah.
I agree with
my
most
wife.
of them.
So I said to Mrs. Finelli, I said, Mrs. Finelli, what is your thought about some of these names? Like, for example, heels up. In the military they might say wheels up, or in the airplane transportation industry they might say wheels up with a W, meaning, lift off. They call her heels up Harris. And there's another name, pretty terrible, Joe and the Hoe. Now, I don't think that's very polite, because I was taught that it's the...
that comes with supportive evidence about the last part of it, but that's not my business.
Right. Well, I don't think it's very polite, because I was taught that the woman's name should go first. So it should be...
So it should be Ho and Joe.
I couldn't have said it better. But, we have reached a terrible, terrible point. We have to be, in the United States, have to be the intergalactic disgrace. And I believe that it is because of the failure of the representatives who have been elected or selected to represent us, and they haven't done it. So because of that, you're hearing names like this. And I don't ever remember such a division in the 68 years I've been walking around, Dr. Shealy, of anything like this. The lockdown of Washington, D.C., the 1/3 of the governors across the 50 United States calling for the National Guard to protect the state capitals from the villagers. I've never heard this before, never seen it, never read it. This is brand new. Dr. Shealy,
it's got to be at least as bad as it was in 1859 and 60.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we're talking about the War of Northern Aggression, also known as the War between the States, also known as the First American Civil War. So, Dr. Shealy, I was reading this article, and normally I just don't talk about articles on the air, but I was reading this article about the people, and they say they were rioting in Washington, D.C. I'm not so sure it was a riot. I think some people got a little out of control and pushed their way into the Capitol and did a little smashing, slashing, crashing, that kind of thing. But I don't think it was a full-scale riot. But I think it was probably a pretty angry show of exasperation with the people who are telling us what to do. Well, during World War II, in France, there was the French Resistance. And the French Resistance was a collection of people in the villages mostly, and they were called the underground. Now, there's all kinds of people. There were lawyers, if you will. There were nuns. There were Catholics. There were Muslims, liberals, Jews, nationalists. There are all kinds of people, academic types, doctors. They were in little loose groups known as the French underground. And what they did was they were disrupting the Nazi occupation of their country, France. This is 1940 through 1945, roughly. And they were just wreaking havoc with the Nazis. And they were very quiet about who they were. They didn't advertise. They didn't say, look at me, I'm in the French underground. And I think they might have reached several 100,000 in the French underground by the end of World War II. Now, we're talking 80 years ago. Well, let's contrast that with the GDP of today. Well, these people who went to Washington were just so impressed with themselves. Technology helped them, and they were taking images, snapping selfies, if you will, of themselves and posting them on the internet. The FBI now has 140,000 images of these morons. Can you imagine that? Look at me. I'm at Washington. I'm disrupting. I'm causing all kinds of problems. Look at me, look at me, look at me. That's what they did. So the roundup has started. And then there's a radio station, or a radio network, and I mentioned this before, and they were on their website saying, hey, you need a ride to Washington? Just sign up. So just put this in perspective, class. You've got people going to a website saying, hey, I need a ride to Washington. Can I ride with you? Somebody you don't know, some website you have no idea where it's going, and you take your phone, which tracks you, and you take pictures of yourself. It's like the dumbest collection of possibilities I can think of. Any quick comments, Dr. Shealy?
Agree.
So, class, you're watching America getting stupider and dumber by the second. So think about it. We've taught all these things, how you're being tracked with the Stingray, this cell phone look-alike, and people saying, my cell phone's not working, I wonder why. Don't go to Washington. Don't participate in this class. It's nuts. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us today.